When it comes to NFL content here on YouTube, draft grades are far from a unique concept, right? I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel here with this series. We pretty much know what it's going to be. But that being said, typically when you see these videos, you get one of four flavors. You'll get somebody who will just talk about the things they liked about the draft, talk about their favorite draft classes. Maybe they'll throw in their least favorite draft classes, but they won't cover the draft in its entirety. Or you'll have somebody who will go division by division, make 8 videos talking about every single NFL division and what those teams in those different divisions did during the draft. You might have somebody who focuses on one specific team. Maybe they have a channel dedicated to that team and they only talk about the picks that that team made. Or you might have somebody who just throws it all in one video, talks for an hour, hour and a half, and that's how they cover the draft in its entirety. And all of that is fine and dandy. No hate to anyone who takes that approach with this content. But for me personally, I kind of hate myself. And also, I'm really disappointed in the pre-draft content I made. I didn't make nearly as much as I wanted to. So to kind of punish myself and also to try to stand out a little bit, we are going to be talking about all 32 teams in depth in 32 different videos. The original plan was to do that throughout the month of May. Obviously, we're in June now. I missed that deadline. So hopefully we'll be able to get it done by June. And if I can't get it done by the end of June, then we'll make another little intro video and I'll talk about how we're going to do it through May, June, and July. We'll just have to see how our schedule shakes out. So before we jump into it, I would like to give a quick disclaimer because this is the #1 type of comment I get on these videos. I would like to point out, I don't think I'm better than any NFL GMs out there. I am an amateur. I am somebody who has a little bit of free time and spends that free time studying the game and scouting college players. I'm not a professional. If you think your favorite GM knows more about football than I do, you're probably right and I won't fault you for that. I'm not trying to say that I know more than any of these GMs I'm critiquing. I'm simply providing analysis based off of my analysis of different draft prospects and also talking about maybe what I would have done differently if I was in their shoes. It's a fun exercise. It's a great way to talk about some guys that I probably wouldn't have talked about otherwise. And if you think this is me trying to say I'm better than X GM, you are absolutely wrong. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about the New England Patriots and what they did during the 2024 NFL Draft. By all accounts, this was a super important draft for the Patriots. You know, this is their first year post Bill Belichick. They have a new regime in town who is trying to set the tone and kind of show what they're about and what their, era of Patriots football is going to look like. And they come into a team that doesn't have a quarterback. They trade away Mac Jones. He goes to Jacksonville for basically nothing because he wasn't a good quarterback. You signed Jacoby Brissett in the offseason, and yeah, he's a great bridge quarterback, but Jacoby's not your long-term answer at quarterback. And you're in position to draft one at 3. And that sparked a lot of debate. There were people in the school of thought that, the Patriots should trade this away for a haul because someone like the Vikings or the Giants is going to trade an arm and a leg to go up and grab May or McCarthy or Daniels or whoever it is. Because this team is not ready to support a quarterback. So you load up on picks now, flesh out the offense, and then draft a quarterback next year because you're not going to be good. Or, on the flip side of things, people like myself said, you have a top 3 pick. There are 2 quarterbacks in this class that are true franchise-altering players, and there's a chance one of them is going to be there at 3. So you hang on to that pick for dear life. You make the pick, you select the quarterback, you let them sit for a year or 2, and you figure out the rest later. And of course, as we all know, the Patriots went with the latter option and ended up taking Drake May out of North Carolina, who was, in my opinion, one of 2 franchise-altering quarterbacks in this class. I absolutely love what Drake May brings to the table. If you watch my top 10 quarterbacks video that aged pretty poorly based off of how I felt later in the draft process, you'd know I initially wanted to say May was the best quarterback in this class. Now, I did sway, I did change my mind. Caleb ended up being my QB1, but it wasn't by like an ungodly margin. I still feel like in most draft classes, in fact, you can go as far back as 2021 and maybe even including 2021 and going a little bit further back and say that May would have been the QB1 in any of those draft classes. Now, obviously, we've had some good quarterbacks pan out like CJ Stroud last year, for example, but talking purely as a prospect, May is one of the best quarterbacks to come out in the last 10 years. He just so happened to share a draft class with Caleb Williams, which hurt his draft stock a little bit. And if you've watched my Washington Commanders draft grades video, you know I thought the Commanders made a franchise-altering mistake by passing on May and taking Jaden Daniels, who I don't think is nearly as good. So the Patriots luck out here. May falls into their lap. They get who I think is going to be their QB of the future, a guy who has the arm, has the athletic traits, can see the field, can manipulate defenders, has good pocket feel. There's just some like a little bit of that gunslinger mentality, maybe not quite as smart with the ball as the great Tom Brady was. But that's one of those things that you can kind of coach out of and be like, hey, Drake, listen, we love the aggression. We love the assertiveness. We don't always have to make a death-defying play, right? Sometimes you can take the check down. Sometimes you can hit the open guy. You can wait a little bit longer. You have the athleticism. You can run. Like, that's the type of thing that having veteran leadership with a guy like Jacoby Brissett and also having some good coaching around him will be able to kind of work with him with. And there's some other stuff too. His footwork isn't great, yada, yada. He's not the perfect quarterback prospect, but as far as prospects go, there's very little that I think is going to be detrimental. And I think there's a lot that if you work on it can be fixed, right? He's got all the intangibles you want. He's got a lot of Josh Allen, a lot of Justin Herbert in his game. And, especially with the former, Patriots fans are pretty familiar with what a guy like that can do for a franchise going up against Buffalo twice a year. So you're in the spot now where you have your guy. You have the guy. Now, I don't know when he'll play this year. I don't know if I love the idea of starting him day one, because I do agree with the people that were in the trade. I thought they should skip out on a quarterback. I do agree that this roster isn't necessarily ready to support a quarterback, a rookie quarterback with their development. You look especially at the situations that Caleb Williams and JJ McCarthy walked into, where they have good offensive lines, good play callers, fantastic weapons, and even Jaden Daniels, who maybe not to the same extent as the other two, but still walked into a much better situation than Drake. You do have to worry a little bit, because quarterback development in the NFL, quarterback success, a lot of that is linked to how good the team around them is. Now, maybe we see Drake go on a bit of a Trevor Lawrence arc where he struggles at first, not because of his own volition, but because of the talent around him. Still making impressive plays, still showing the flashes of like legit quarterbacking. Maybe that'll be the case. Maybe they'll sit him for the first year and let Jacoby play it out. If something happens to Jacoby or if he gets benched, you let Zappy take over. They have options. They don't have to rush Drake out immediately. So I do think some of the complaints that like the Patriots are going to ruin Drake May are a little bit overblown, but I guess there is a world where that could happen. That being said, I think this was absolutely the right pick. I think getting May at 3 is a steal, considering there was a quarterback taken ahead of him. And I absolutely adore it. Like, this was the right move for the Patriots. I think he has the potential to be the next big thing alongside Caleb Williams. I think, people talked about how great the 2021 class was going to be. I think we can absolutely look back at this class in 2, 3, maybe 4 years and say that this was what 2021 was supposed to be, with Drake and Caleb and JJ McCarthy. If he develops well, I think Bo Nix can at least be what we thought Mac Jones was. Maybe Jaden surprises me. He's kind of like the Trey Lance of this class for me, where I don't quite know what he's going to be yet, but he has some of the tools, has some of the exciting stuff. So we'll have to see. But Drake was absolutely the right pick here. I like taking him over, taking the draft picks and whatnot. I think at a certain point, you just got to lock down your quarterback. And I haven't scouted next year's QB class, but what I have heard and the little bit I have seen, I don't think anybody in next year's class is going to be quite as good as Drake. So I think you made the right call here. You don't want to cheap out on the quarterback position by any means. But then you get to day 2. And this is where my problems with this class start. And honestly, it's where my big problems end. And that's taking Jalen Polk, fifth pick in the second round, You trade down with the Chargers, who end up taking Ladd McConkey, who I think is a substantially better ball player. And you end up taking somebody who, I thought was a third round type of guy, wasn't in my top 15 receivers in this class. He was barely the 10th one off the board. I don't know. I just don't see the vision, because you look at the Patriots receiver room right now. outside of the two rookies, you have Kendrick Bourne, you have KJ Osborne, you have Juju Smith-Schuster, Pop Douglas, Kayshon Boutte, Jalen Reagor, Tyquan Thornton. None of those guys are a true number one. Like, you don't have that alpha. You don't have that true number one standout receiver. And we're seeing in today's NFL, that's a bigger deal than ever. You know, you got to have that true alpha to really be successful, especially with a young quarterback. And they don't have that. And I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think Polk and I don't think Baker are that. I think Baker's an incredible complementary piece. And I think Polk is an okay complementary piece. But when you have some of the other receivers that were on the board here, like you look at Ladd McConkey still being there because you traded down out of him. I think that would have been a better pick to make. You have Adonai Mitchell. You have a guy like Roman Wilson, who I thought was better. His teammate Jalen McMillan was still on the board. They had a couple options at receiver who either would have been a better player day one, had more upside, or gave them something different. Because Jalen Polk is very much like a Kendrick Bourne in the sense that they have decent size and are going to be good over the middle, but they're not super athletic. They're not super dominant at the catch point. They're not like the best route runner. It's kind of like a jack of all trades, master of none type of player. And I think Bourne and Polk are, I don't want to say redundant, but they're very similar. And, you know, maybe this is just a testament to how not confident they are in Bourne's return from injury. And if that's the case, then I like the pick a little bit more. But even then, you know, why settle for the same type of guy when you can go get Mitchell or McConkey specifically that can be true number ones? Like, McConkey is going to be one of the best route runners in football. Reminds me a lot of a guy like Deontay Johnson, who we saw was able to be a true number one when he had decent quarterback play. You can take a guy like Adonai Mitchell, who, I know this isn't an original comp, but there's a lot of CD Lamb in his game. CD Lamb might be the second, third, fourth best receiver in the sport. And Adonai Mitchell, yeah, you can cry about the diabetes thing, whatever. I don't care. You know, if you have any faith in your front office and your coaching staff and what you're building, you think you can get around a guy who gets a little cranky when his blood sugar drops a little bit. Like, I think you can look past that, especially if it's going to help your young quarterback. But instead, we go with Jalen Polk, who, you know, I don't want to discredit the guy. I still think he can be an okay receiver. But there's just not a lot of, like, hoorah to his game. There's not a lot of, like, this guy's going to stand out. He's another jag in this receiver room that's filled with jags. Like, straight up, out of the guys that they had going into this draft, Pop Douglas is the only guy who I look at and I say that is a long-term contributor for the New England Patriots football team. That is a guy that I can see being in this receiver core 5 years from now and still being a solid part of it. Because, yeah, he's small, but Pop Douglas is an awesome slot receiver. So what you should have done is gone out and gotten yourself an incredible route running Z in a guy like Ladd McConkey, or gotten yourself a true alpha X receiver in a guy like Adonai Mitchell. But instead, you take Jalen Polk, who, in my opinion, I think is going to do his best work from the slot. Maybe you trust Pop to play the Z. I can get behind that. But still, I just don't love the fit. I don't love passing up on those two other guys. And honestly, I think if you were super worried about Drake's development, you go offensive line here. Like, you go offensive line in the third round, and we'll talk about that because I have my own problems with the Caden Wallace pick. But you could have avoided the Caden Wallace pick and taken a better offensive tackle here. Like, you look at the offensive linemen that were available here at pick 37, specifically the tackles. Yeah, you had that big run in the first round that ended with Tyler Guyton, but you still could have taken guys like Patrick Paul, Blake Fisher, Kingsley Suamataia, Karan Amagaji, all guys I thought were better than Caden Wallace. Any of them at tackle would have fit a lot better. You also could have went with the interior of the offensive line and taken pretty much your pick of the litter at guard or center. Jackson Powers Johnson was still there. Cooper Beebe was on the board. Christian Haynes was on the board. Mason McCormick was on the board, who went way later than he should have. You look at some of the centers. Graham Barton was the only one off the board. You could have went with Zach Frazier. Could have went with Cedric Van Pran Granger, who went to the Bills and was way underdrafted. Like, you had options up front. You could have taken better receivers. But the point is, you could have spent this pick better elsewhere if you were really determined to trade down. And I just don't think Polk was the pick. Now, I do think Polk will be fine. I think he will be a competent receiver for the Patriots. I don't think this is like a Jalen Reagor, throw this pick away, he's off the team in a couple years, or, the guy the Patriots actually drafted, who was just with my Bears not too long ago, N'Keal Harry. I don't know why I forgot his name. I don't think this is like a N'Keal Harry pick where he's off the team in a couple years either. I think Polk will stick around for at least the duration of his rookie contract. But I don't see him being anything special. I don't see him being a standout guy. And I think when you still had guys on the board that could be standout ball players, taking a guy like Polk is a miss. And then in the third round, they do a lot more of the same with Caden Wallace, who was my 13th ranked offensive tackle. I had a 4th round grade on him. And like I said, there were better offensive linemen on the board. We go back again to look at the offensive tackles that were on the board at this point, because I do think a couple of them went between Polk and Wallace. Yeah, you lose out on Kingsley Sumatea, Patrick Paul, Blake Fisher. You lose out on those guys that you could have taken in the second round. I thought would have been better. But even here, like, Karan Amagaji's on the board. Caden Wallace and Karan Amagaji are both guys that you're going to have to give a little bit of development to. And I think Amagaji has higher upside. I think he's somebody that I would trust a lot more as a developmental player. And with Wallace, I mean, to me, you're just getting a basic right tackle. I don't trust him at left tackle. I don't think he's somebody that's going to have... I don't know. I guess I can't really say that. I just see him as a bigger, bulkier, run-blocking right tackle. And when you have Mike Onwenu, that's like the one position on your offensive line you really didn't need to make a move at. Now, I would assume their plan is to play him at left tackle, considering they have Chuks Okorafor at left tackle. But I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of that. But, looking at what Wallace does well, good size, good strength, good anchor, good grip strength. He's got pretty solid hand usage, good at picking up on blitzes and stunts. He has the tenacity you want. He plays through the whistle, but he has some issues with his movement. Like, his hips are rigid. He bends a lot. His feet are slow. He doesn't have a great first step. He's going to overcompensate for that lack of athleticism by oversetting in pass protection, which is going to cause him to get beat inside quite a bit. He's not great at getting to the second level, and his pad level is going to be too high. So again, you've got like a low upside developmental offensive tackle that you're taking in the third round when you like actually need offensive line help. I don't get it. I really do not get it. Karan Amagaji was right there. He would have been a better pick here. Or again, you take a tackle in the second. Here in the third, there were still plenty of fun wide receivers to pick from. Like, if you really wanted to say, we think Drake will be fine with a bunch of average receivers, we just want to make sure he stays upright, then yeah, that's fine. That works. For this year, give yourself a better chance to throw Drake out there, or give Drake some building blocks in the trenches to work with next year, whatever it may be. I don't love the Wallace pick. So then we get to day 3, and they double down on assisting their offensive line by taking Layden Robinson, the guard, out of Texas A&M. And I'll tell you up front, I did not watch Robinson before the draft. I ended up going back and watching him after the draft, and he's fine. I don't have any super aggressive takes against him or for him, really. He's got the size, he's got the first step, he's able to create displacement early. He's good at sustaining and finishing blocks. He has relatively nimble footwork. He's good at hitting linebackers at the second level, pulling across the line of scrimmage, has good length, good enough to reach and pass pro, and he has a lot of power in his hands. The other side, though, he has an elevated pad level, which is going to hurt him. Sometimes he is a little too antsy to get into his blocks, so he'll mistime them, get to positions too early, and, that can create some problems, obviously. Hand placement as a run blocker isn't great. He's pretty often off balance again. That eagerness almost gets in his way in that regard. Not great against blitzes or stunts. And his footwork, while it is relatively nimble, still isn't, NFL average, NFL good. It's just okay. And, you know, some guys can get away with that, some can't. But my big, like, I don't even want to necessarily say issue, because I think the Robinson pick's fine. You know, it's the 4th round. You get an offensive lineman who, you know, I guess does have starter upside. Like, you look at what they have at guard right now. You have Cole Strange, who's been interesting to say the least. And then you have City Sow as your other guard, who I liked when he was coming out of college. So it's not like you need Leighton Robinson to step in day one. But after him, you know, guys like Mason McCormick, Trevor Keegan, Christian Mahogany, those are 3 guards that were still on the board that I was pretty high on, especially McCormick. McCormick was one of my favorite interior linemen in this class. He would be a much better fit. Like, he's very similar to Robinson in the sense that he's a better run blocker than he is a pass blocker. He's got the size, he's got the physicality. Like, they're very similar players. Same thing with Christian Mahogany, who fell way too far. I hate that he ended up in Detroit. He's somebody that definitely could do what you want Robinson to do, and so could Trevor Keegan. Like, all 3 of them, I think, would have been better picks here. So that's kind of my, you know, reasoning for not grading this pick super high. Again, I don't hate it. I don't love it. I'm pretty indifferent towards it. I just think there were better players on the board. I think Robinson has a chance to be a solid starter in the NFL, and if you can get that out of the 4th round, then, you know, by all means, right? You're just looking for guys that, you know, can make some sort of impact here in the 4th round. So I can't hate the pick. I just do think there were better players on the board at the position. I think you kind of backed yourself into a corner with having to take linemen here in the 4th round as well. Because again, like I said, with the Polk pick and with the Wallace pick, there were better guys to have taken there that could have put you in a better situation. But I digress. I can't get upset at the Robinson pick. I don't have super strong thoughts on it, like I said. So we'll go ahead and move on to their next pick, 7 picks later. They take Javon Baker, the wide receiver out of UCF. And quite ironically, I had a higher grade on Baker than I did on Polk. Baker was my wide receiver 13. Polk was my wide receiver 18. So I liked Baker a lot more. I think there is more to his game. I think there are places where he's going to be more of a standout player. Again, I said Polk was very much a jack of all trades, master of none type. Baker, he can be a legit Z at the next level, and even then, he has some potential. Like, I think the best way to put it is he's one of those guys you could get away with playing as an X, because he is pretty okay at contested catches, but I think ideally you want to play him as a Z. He reminds me a lot of Michael Gallup before he got hurt. You know, when people were talking about him being a big free agent, and when he was one of the better offensive players on the Cowboys, like that Michael Gallup, I see a lot of that in Javon Baker. Which is, you know, if you remember that Michael Gallup, that's a pretty big compliment. Prime peak Michael Gallup was a pretty damn respectable receiver. He would certainly be the best receiver on the Patriots right now. And I think there's a world where Baker is that as early as year 1, if not, assuming they don't make a big splash at receiver next offseason, which I find hard to believe. I think they will. Then maybe he goes into year 2 as their best receiver. But kind of looking at what he does well, he has great play strength, really good length, has enough long speed and burst to create some separation downfield. He's a twitched up, energetic short area mover. He's able to create separation late into the snap because of that, you know, that high energy, kind of like a high motor always running there. He's really good at manipulating soft spots in the zone. He has pretty good release ability. He's able to beat press primarily with physicality over footwork. He's a solid route runner, even though his route tree was limited at UCF. The routes he was running were pretty damn good. He's really good on double moves specifically. He likes to utilize a violent jab step move and late route adjustments to get DBs to hesitate and, you know, create that little second of separation. Like I said, he's really good at creating separation late into routes. He's incredibly instinctive as a hands catcher. He's able to guide the ball past his frame pretty well. Had a 51% contested catch rate last year. Relative to his size, you know, being 6'1", he has a pretty nasty catch radius. He has incredible body control. He's able to manipulate his body to reel in tough catches. He has good production, you know, averaged 22.5 yards per reception in 2023. And he's a good rack threat as well. You know, he's got the twitch, the vision, spatial awareness, you know, that kind of thing. He's able to, you know, create some real separation and be able to make plays after the catch as well. Now, on the flip side, he doesn't have ideal speed for a deep threat. He's not going to win laterally a ton because his twitch, while good in short areas, doesn't help him a lot downfield. He's not good at pinching tight angles on his routes. His contact balance after the catch is lackluster. That's kind of where he's going to struggle after the catch. But, he doesn't get hit a lot after the catch. He's pretty good at avoiding getting hit, avoiding having his contact balance come into play. So, and on top of that, he does have solid hands. Like I said, he's a good hands catcher, but a 12% drop rate in the last 2 seasons is notable. However, being more of a deep threat, maybe that's not a huge deal. So like I said, Baker, I think ideally would serve as a Z for you long term. Now, right away, they probably try him as an X. I think they'll probably I don't know. I don't know how they're going to let their receiver room shake out. I think you have some flexibility there. It kind of depends on who your starters are going to be. I would hope Baker's one of the starters. Looking at what they have right now, if Bourne's healthy, he'd be your Z. You could play Baker as your X and then pop Douglas out of the slot. Or you could play Polk out of the slot, let Douglas be your 4th receiver. But then you have KJ Osborne and Juju, who are decent enough receivers. It's like I said early in the video, they have a bunch of guys. They have a bunch of guys where, to the point where it's hard to justify keeping any of them off the field for a prolonged amount of time. But they don't have any guys that have DCs or defenders quaking in their boots thinking, oh God, we got to go against this guy this week. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But Baker does give you a little bit of flexibility. Like I said, I think ideally long-term, I'd like to see him as a Z, but he certainly possesses the ability to be an X. I'd just like to see his separation improve a little bit more there. But either way, we will have to see. I'm excited for Baker. I think he's going to be a fun target for Drake May. As you move to the other side of the ball here in the 6th round, don't have a pick in the 5th round, they take the defensive back out of South Carolina, Marcellus Dial Jr. And he's another guy that I just didn't watch a lot of, if any of, before the season or before the draft. But after the draft, I see the vision. Developmental corner, has the physical ability. He's good at jamming receivers at the line. He's tenacious. He's good at keeping himself in front of receivers and staying in their face. Really good burst. He's really able to recover if he gets beat downfield, that type of thing. He plays the ball aggressively. He'll slap at it. He'll punch at it. He'll chop at it. He'll find a way to get the ball jammed loose. And he's pretty good at landing that initial punch at the line of scrimmage. So he's got the physicality. He's got some of the athletic traits. Just not great at kind of seeing what's going on in front of him, in terms of play recognition and instincts and being able to read out offenses pre-snap. He does struggle there. So you're taking him, just to say he's got the tools. Let's see what we can do with him. Here in the 6th round, I can't say anything negative about that. There's not anyone on the board here who I'd go to bat for, say this should have been the pick, 100% guaranteed. Passing up on him is a total mistake. I can't say anything about that right here. So I think it's a solid enough pick. Worst case, I think he can be a fine special teamer, but we'll have to see if he even makes the roster, because here in the 6th round, that's obviously not a guarantee. Then also in the 6th round, 13 picks later, they take another quarterback, this time taking Joe Milton out of Tennessee. And look, I'm going to tell you outright, I don't know that Milton plays quarterback at the next level, and I hate doing that. Just because, the whole stereotype of black quarterbacks that are really athletic switching positions, it's something I hate, right? It's something you hate to see. It's something you hate to see people argue for. We saw it with Lamar Jackson. We saw it with Justin Fields. We see it with Malik Cunningham now, who I think is officially switched to wide receiver. Usually when you make that kind of comparison, there's undertones, right? When you hear someone bring that up, there are undertones. But with Joe Milton, the fact of the matter is this guy's a 6th-year senior. He hasn't figured out how to consistently throw the football. And he is massive and athletic. He is 6'5", 235 pounds, and is a really solid mover. So why try to teach a 6th-year senior how to throw the football if he doesn't already, when your tight end room could use some depth? And he has the size to play it. Like, just looking at what he does as a quarterback, right? Massive frame, really strong arm, one of the strongest arms in the league day one. He is able to overcompensate for late reads by firing balls into holes and, just having enough zip behind the throw to get it there almost instantly. He's able to throw with a lot of velocity is what I'm trying to say, basically. There's some accuracy flashes over the middle of the field, but nothing consistent, nothing you can get excited about. Definitely at his best when he's throwing the ball downfield. His mechanics are okay when the pocket's clean, but not nearly good enough, especially not for someone of his age. And as a runner, he has great burst. He's super tough and has really good straight line speed. Like, if he's running downfield, it's going to be hard to not only catch him, but when you catch him, it's going to be hard to bring him down because of how big and strong he is. Now, that being said, he can't get through his progressions. He can't read the field, like, at all. He really struggles to throw over the middle of the field. Like I said, there's some flashes there, but not nearly enough to get excited about. He's slow to make his reads. He lacks creativity as the passer. He doesn't move around in the pocket. He has no pocket awareness. He's a total statue back there. And when he does move around in the pocket, it's like as soon as the ball's snapped, he runs. He bails way too quickly. And something else I noticed, specifically if you go back and watch him against Florida last year, he has a tendency to release the ball really low, which is concerning for a quarterback that is 6'5". So, I don't know. I don't see him working out as a quarterback. I simply do not. And I think if you want to give him a chance to succeed at some position, tight end would suit him best. Because again, 6'5", 235, huge frame, big hands, athletic, strong. Maybe you can have him like run some trick plays, and every once in a while you can use that big arm, catch some guys off guard. We've seen the Patriots do that in the past, obviously, but that was with Belichick. We'll have to see if the new regime's interested in that kind of stuff. But I digress. The point is, leaving him a quarterback would be a total waste of his athletic talent, and trying to teach a sixth-year senior the position essentially from the ground up when you already drafted your quarterback and have Jacoby Brissett and Bailey Zappi on the roster, it just seems kind of pointless. And that's not me trying to gas up Bailey Zappi. I just think he can at least sometimes play quarterback. And as your QB3, I think you're okay with that. Jacoby Brissett, obviously a good journeyman, probably going to be your starter for most of the year. If he's not, he's a really good backup. And Drake, I've already talked about. So I just don't see it with Milton. I went with a B- here because I don't know what they're going to do with him. If they play him at quarterback, this could be a lot lower because I just don't think he's an NFL quarterback. There were better quarterbacks on the board. Guys like Talia Tagovailoa, Austin Reed, Sam Hartman, even three guys that went undrafted I thought would have been better picks here. And I believe Michael Pratt was drafted around here. I don't know if it was necessary. No, it was after. Yeah, Michael Pratt would have been a much better backup if you wanted an actual quarterback. So I don't know. We'll have to see. As for the tight ends on the board, I mean, the only one that I liked more than him, or the only one that I watched, was the guy they drafted next. So can't complain too much. I just think maybe your assets could have been better spent here. I don't know what their plan is with Milton. If they move him to tight end and he doesn't work out, then this grade would be higher. But there's been no confirmation that's the case. So we'll have to see. But moving on to their final pick, they took Raheem Bell, the tight end out of Florida State. And I'm going to tell you outright, I don't think that's the position he's going to play for New England. Another guy that I think is going to not switch his position, but do something a little bit differently. I don't think he's going to be a traditional inline tight end. I don't think he's even necessarily going to be like a Y tight end, a move tight end. I think we're looking at more of an H-back, of a wing back, of a, dare I even say, fullback, right? Like that type of player who is primarily used as an athletic blocker out of the backfield, might line up with his hand in the dirt from time to time, does all of the fullback stuff without having the quote-unquote stigma of the position that people think it carries now, which is ridiculous. But the point is, I think that is more of his role. He fits that way better. Talking about a guy that's 6'2", 241 pounds. That screams tight end converted to fullback. 6'2" tight ends, they don't have a lot of success in the NFL, right? Point blank period. If you want to be a tight end in the NFL, you got to be a little bit bigger than that. 6'2", that's prime fullback height. So you're looking at a guy who is undersized, but has the ability to make plays out of the backfield and can block pretty well on the move. Like if you're sending him out as a lead blocker, or, whether it's lined up from the backfield, from tight end, from the slot, because he lined up all over the place from Florida State. wherever you line him up at, if you ask him to move and hit somebody, he's going to do that. He can do that pretty consistently. I'm a fan of what I saw there. That being said, though, he's not a great downfield threat. You know, that's kind of one of the big things because his route running and his stride length, not great, right? He's not somebody who finishes a lot of his routes to kind of add to that. But, you know, if you can get him just playing out of the backfield, making some plays here and there, just kind of serving his role as a blocker. He needs some refinement there. I'm not trying to act like he is the best blocker ever. He's not. There are some times where he'll miss his mark, or sometimes where, you know, his hand placement might not be great, but he has the tenacity, he has the drive, he has the size, he has the physicality. That's what matters more right now. You know, you can teach the hand placement. If you just say, hey, go out and hit somebody, and eventually we'll teach you how to hit somebody with some discipline, then by all means, right? So I like the Bell pick. I had a 5th round grade on him as, you know, just kind of a versatile offensive player that would primarily play out of the backfield. You know, he played some halfback at Florida State. Like, he played everywhere. It's like I said, H-back, fullback, wingback, tight end, halfback, slot wide receiver. I'm pretty sure he played out wide a couple times. I can't say this for certain, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was a play where he was a Wildcat fullback, or Wildcat quarterback, excuse me. Like, he played everywhere, you know, so he'll probably be a good, like, after the catch, get the ball to him short, move blocker type of player, or in other words, the modern fullback, right? So we'll have to see what the plan is there. But overall, I think the Patriots did a fine job. Is this 10 out of 10 knocking the ball out of the park? Oh my God, the Patriots are so back type of draft? Not quite. But this is one that gives me confidence in the new regime, right? They did a good enough job. It's a new regime. They're going to do some things outside of the box. They're going to do some things that I don't agree with. I can't get too mad at them for that. Now, obviously, I do have to reflect that in my draft grade, but I do like their vision, at least, right? They tried to make an effort to help out Drake, and that was the big thing for me, which will bump their grade up a little bit. So I'm going to give them a B. I think, obviously, getting Drake, getting your potential franchise quarterback's incredible. Loved the value of the Baker and Bell picks. Marcellus Dial might be something we'll have to see. Milton is interesting. Clayton Robinson could be a starter. And then Polk and Wallace just proved me wrong. You know, I'm rooting for the Patriots. I love Drake May. I want to see Drake May succeed. I'm a big Drake May fan. I'm a North Carolina fan. So I want the Patriots to prove me wrong. I want this football team to be damn good here in a year or two. And, you know, who knows? Maybe they'll get back to the Super Bowl. Maybe we'll get a Drake versus Caleb Super Bowl, because that would be incredible. That would be absolutely incredible. That's my end goal here. I want to see Drake and Caleb face off in the Super Bowl with the teams that drafted them, not after moving around, not after any of that kind of shenanigans. Just play good, develop, get a team around you, and hopefully something happens there. So the Patriots' future is exciting. They've got the big piece figured out. Now it's just a matter of making sure he's got what he needs to succeed long term.
Had a chance on the throwback. This was an ill-advised throw. What an unbelievable catch by Cole Kmet. And he cups it too. No movement when he hits the ground, tucked up against his shoulder. Wow.
Using that